sensitive. It can be sensitive, but it makes a lot of sense. An essay that you have written about teacher tenure. A lot of folks don't want to talk about this because they usually have a teacher in their family. Isn't that right, James?
That's absolutely right. I mean, anytime you start talking about job protection for people, they get a little antsy. They're nervous to talk about it. But, I'm a former teacher. My wife was a teacher. So, yes, it does get sensitive, but it's absolutely something we have to talk about.
Well, let's talk about it. James Shuls is here, Education Policy Analyst with the Show Me Institute. And you can see the essay that we're going to review if you go to the website, showmeinstitute.org, showmeinstitute.org. What are you saying essentially in this essay?
So in the essay, first I take a look at teacher tenure. How did we get to where we are now? What are the current laws? And then we survey superintendents in Missouri. About 192 superintendents participated in our survey, and we asked them a variety of questions about teacher tenure. Mainly, how difficult is it to get rid of a tenured teacher for their performance in the classroom? And I want to be clear up front that all the superintendents told me that, hey, if there's some sort of immoral conduct or something like that, it's easy to get that person out of the classroom. But what we're talking about is a teacher that just stinks at their job. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just not effective at teaching kids.
Well, and I'm guessing that the answer is it's almost impossible to get rid of a tenured teacher.
Well, so the responses from the superintendents say that it's not impossible, but it's certainly not easy either. About 75% of the superintendents that we surveyed, or about three-quarters, said it's somewhat or very difficult to remove a tenured teacher. And they cite a number of reasons for this, but mostly paperwork and time. It takes a lot of time to document all the steps that you have to document to remove a tenured teacher. And that takes a lot of time and consideration and a whole lot of documentation. You have to really work hard to remove a tenured teacher just for their performance in the classroom.
A lot of kids who want to go into teaching, that's one of the reasons why. So if I'm there long enough, eventually I've got a guaranteed job.
Well, it makes sense. People want to have some sort of protection. And schools are different than the rest of the free market because the board that can hire and fire you are often elected, on political whims. And so you might have someone elected that might target you to remove you from your job, or you might have a superintendent or a principal that doesn't like you and wants to just target you for no good reason. And so people want those protections, and heck, I want some protections. That would be great. But the problem is when the protections start protecting the people that are just doing a poor job. Schools are there to educate kids. They're there to teach them, to help them get to the next level. And when the teacher can't do that and the tenure system becomes cumbersome and protects those individuals, we have a real problem.
James Shuls is here from the Show Me Institute. What is tenure? What is the term tenure?
I mean, essentially in state statute, it says that tenure is an indefinite contract. So in Missouri, you first start teaching, you're a probationary teacher. You do that for 5 years, and then after the fifth year, you automatically, if you're rehired, get tenure, which is essentially an indefinite contract that lasts for the rest of your career until you retire, or you are removed from the classroom for some sort of conduct, or you go through a tenure hearing like I'm talking about where you're just not good and they put forth a lot of effort to get you out of the classroom. But basically, it's an indefinite contract.
And how is tenure, say as an example, from kindergarten through high school, how is that different than the tenure of a college professor?
All right, so many people like to think that the tenure in K-12 is the same as tenure for college professors, but they were started for different reasons. So tenure for college professors was really about protecting their right to speak out and to write on different issues and those types of things, protecting their free speech and their ability to say unpopular things. But in K-12, it was started to protect teachers. The working conditions in the late 1800s and 1900s weren't the best, and so they wanted to help the teachers sort of have some more protections to attract more high-quality people into the profession. So that's where it started from, sort of two different routes. And now the systems are still quite different. So in higher education, you don't just automatically get tenure. Tenure is a decision that's based on your performance in the classroom, your research record. I mean, it's really based on your performance. And not every college professor is on a tenure track. So some never are going to get tenure. Others will go up for tenure review and not get tenure. The statistics are about, I think, 50% of higher education professors actually receive tenure. Now, in K-12 in Missouri, it's different. Like I said, after your 5th year, you automatically get it, whether you're the best teacher or you are one of the worst teachers. If you teach for 5 years consecutively, you're going to get tenure.
And is this because of the strength of the teachers' union?
Well, it's partly because of that, but it's really because it's set in statute. It's set in the state law that this is the way it is. And the state law is very prescriptive on when you receive tenure and how the schools must go about removing the tenure teacher. It lays out, you have to give them 30 days to improve once you've notified them of their deficiencies. And then after that, you have all these steps that you must take. And you must really carefully document all along the way to remove the tenure, to remove the teacher. And that comes from the state statute. Now, how it got there, whether that's a combination of teachers' unions and teacher interest groups or whatever it was, it's there now, and it's causing somewhat of a problem.
James Shuls is here from the Show Me Institute. We're talking about tenured teachers and how that impacts the quality of education in Missouri. And we'll take your phone calls, 862-9977, 1-800-375-0056 on Morning Line, AM 560 KWTO. Morning Line, how you doing this morning? 862-9977 and 1-800-375-0056. Our guest is James Shuls, who has a Ph.D., and he is the Education Policy Analyst for the Show Me Institute. And the Show Me Institute, their mission is to advance liberty with responsibility by promoting market solutions for Missouri public policy. James, and you can look at this essay anytime at showmeinstitute.org, James has written an essay about teacher tenure. And as part of the essay, James has done a survey of school superintendents in Missouri. What did you find out, James?
Well, overwhelmingly, superintendents would be in support of some type of teacher tenure reform. We said that about close to 3/4 said that removing a tenured teacher for the performance was somewhat or very difficult. Well, about 92% say that they would be in favor of some type of reform, depending on the specifics, but that's a pretty high number of superintendents, the people in charge of removing teachers, who recognize there are some problems, there might need to be some changes made.
What do you think the problems are about? I mean, once a teacher obtains tenure, that maybe that they lessen their workload inside the classroom, or what do you suppose can we put a handle on this, or can we grasp it?
I mean, I think that might be the case for some people. Some people might let up. But it could be the case that some individuals should have never got there in the first place. The school district was in a bind. They needed a teacher. They had this person, and it was more difficult to fire them and look for someone else than it was to just keep them on. So for whatever reason, we know that some bad teachers are getting to the point of tenure. Whether that's an old administrator who let them get there or the current one, whatever it is, some bad teachers are staying in the classroom who shouldn't be. And the superintendents recognize that it's pretty difficult to remove these people, and they'd be interested in seeing some types of reforms. Now, they say, depending on the specifics, they have lots of different ideas, and they're not going to be supportive of every type of tenure reform, but basically, superintendents would love more control locally, to not have these policies dictated from the State House, but to be able to determine them locally so they can come up with policies that really fit their local school districts.
I mean, that's really what it's about here, is who has control. Is it the teachers' unions who can require the tenure to remain according to state law, or can we somehow get the responsibility and the decisions made about schools as local as possible? I mean, isn't that what it's about according to your essay?
Well, absolutely. So, I mean, right now, like I said, these are set in state statute, and so if we want to remove tenure or reform tenure, then you have to do it at the State House. You have to do it in Jefferson City through the legislature, or some other means of changing the statute. But right now, superintendents are confined. They have to work within the system that they have. And there are some instances where the local schools can work fairly well with the teachers' unions and have a good evaluation policy, but they're still working with shackles on, essentially. They're working within the confines of, this is exactly what you have to do, follow all of these prescribed situations, and follow all of these details, and then you can remove a teacher. And I think what a lot of superintendents would love to see is, like I said, more ability to develop those policies locally. And one of the suggestions they put was maybe instead of having this indefinite contract, what if we have multiple-year contracts? So you have a teacher who you think is really good, you offer them a 3 or 5 year contract. That gives you some protection and some security.
But it's
while
not
at the same
indefinite.
time,
But it's not indefinite, which is the problem.
absolutely. It allows them to evaluate that person in a few years and decide if they need to keep that person on or if it's time to let them go.
All right. Now, the tenure reform that you're referring to, it would take an act of the Missouri legislature to reform tenure. But we've seen already in this debate about the tax cut bill that the educational community is coming out in support of the governor's veto. It is very hard to change educational reform.
Oh, it's absolutely. You know, when I was just in Springfield at the end of July, and I spoke with Representative Eric Burleson, and he was saying, he's on the House Education Committee, and he was saying every single vote on education is an emotional one. Every time a bill comes forward, someone is there speaking emotionally about the topic. And so, I mean, this is like you mentioned at the outset, this is a touchy topic because we know teachers. We also are concerned about kids, and we want to do what's right by them. And so, on both sides of the aisle, you have people coming in with a lot of emotion, and it becomes very difficult to make these changes. And like you've mentioned many times, teachers' unions, the education bureaucracy, a lot of it doesn't want to see stuff changed. You know, there's a lot of the devil in the devil that you know versus the devil that you don't know, and so people are concerned about changes that might be made, but something should be done. The question is, are we going to be able to do it, or what is that something that we should do?
All right, we're visiting with James Shuls, who is the Education Policy Analyst for the Show Me Institute. And I want to read, if I could, James, just a moment of the conclusion of your essay. And this essay is available if you want to read it at showmeinstitute.org. Responses to our survey of superintendents indicate that there is much room for teacher tenure reform in Missouri. 73% of superintendents in our survey stated that it is somewhat or very difficult to remove a tenured teacher. What is best for the kids, James, in the classroom may not always be what the state law permits.
Well, absolutely. And there are lots of times when it comes to schools, we have policies that are in place to protect teachers or the adults. And we need to think about our policies that are really going to promote student learning, that are going to protect the kids. I mean, there have been a number of studies that have shown there's a huge difference between a highly effective and a less effective teacher. I mean, it could be as much as a year's worth of learning. So if you're in a really great teacher's classroom, you're learning a lot of material, and that material can be a whole year's worth of material more than in a kid just down the hall in a bad teacher's classroom.
Is Missouri unlike other states around us in terms of tenure?
Well, we're unlike other states. I mean, most states have a similar policy where tenure is granted after a certain number of years. And we actually are good in that we have it after 5 years. Other states have it after 2 or 3 years. And so that is good, but that doesn't mean just because everyone else has something similar that we're somehow doing it right. I think in all of these states there's room for reform, absolutely.
Well, we're visiting with James Shuls of the Show Me Institute, and in your essay you point out that even President Obama in Missouri said that while he was visiting Missouri, said the single most important factor in the classroom is the quality of the person standing at the front of the classroom. How can you be assured that you have the most qualified individual if we continue to have tenured teachers that don't have to answer to school superintendents?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that tenure reform does is it allows the superintendents to be able to get those bad teachers out of the classroom. It gives a little bit of motivation to teachers, and I understand most teachers really care. Most teachers want to do right by kids and want to be a great teacher, but there are some, and most of us have seen at least one of these throughout our careers, where there's some bad teachers who just don't care. And if we want to have high-quality teachers for every kid, we need to be able to get those teachers out of the classroom and try to get someone else in who's going to do a better job.
And frankly, James, I don't know the answer to this question I'm about to ask, but where is tenure a good idea? Where is it, other than Alex Rodriguez with the Yankees, where is tenure a good idea where you are guaranteed a job for the rest of your working life?
Right. I can't think of a very good example. I mean, In this instance, it makes sense to have some type of job protection. So the superintendents recognized that in our survey. They said, we have to be concerned, like I mentioned, about school board members targeting a certain coach because their kid didn't play or something along those lines. But we have those same types of things that happen in the public sector where a worker might be targeted. And we have laws that already protect people for being fired for bad reasons, essentially, being targeted for or discriminated against. And so it's hard for me to find an example of why we need the current tenure law that we have. I'm sure that we could work out other systems where we have some evaluations and we protect the good teachers while still being able to get rid of the bad teachers.
And I think the legislature might be willing to look at this in the coming January session if it weren't for the power of the teachers' union.
Well, something on this came up twice in this past legislative session. So there were 2 votes on teacher tenure. Now, what those bills did is they lumped in with reforming tenure with a new evaluation system. And so they were saying that districts had to use this type of evaluation system, and it was somewhat prescriptive on what districts had to do. And so this is where I say the devil, or the details that you know, and the devil in the details that you don't know. So there was some resistance, and it was absolutely from those entrenched bureaucracies, the teachers' unions and whatnot, that fought against that. And the argument that they made was that it was anti-local control. But people need to realize our current situation is not pro-local control. The current tenure laws do not promote a healthy local school district. They promote a bureaucracy that makes it very difficult to remove tenured teachers.
And they promote decisions not being made locally, which
right.
All schools are better with local decisions by a local board. Well, it's a fascinating essay, and get to the bottom line, if you will, of what we learned from your essay, from this research that you've done with school superintendents across the state.
I think the bottom line is that superintendents need the power to lead. Right now, through state statute, we restrict their power to lead their local schools, and if that's what we hire them for, that's what we entrust them to do, we need to equip them with the power to actually lead their districts and take the power from the State House and put it into the schoolhouse.
All right, for more information, you can go online to showmeinstitute.org, showmeinstitute.org. Tell us about that website and what you learned.
Oh, you can on our website. We have all kinds of information there. I write on education policy, but we talk about a number of different issues, tax policy, and all kinds of things. We have videos and policy studies and papers like this essay that your readers can come check out. And we also have a regular blog that you could check out, which is showmedaily.org.
Now, the idea is just to offer research, right, James? The idea is to offer good, valid points, arguments that can be made for a specific issue.
Oh, absolutely. We try to research the issues and let people know what might really happen in certain situations, what the policies really say, what's really going on, and look at things from a free market perspective, always thinking about giving more power to the individual and more power to the local government, taking away from the bureaucracies.
Well, I tell you, it's a very sensitive topic because everyone knows a teacher, and tenure is an extremely touchy subject, but I think you've handled it well. And the idea is not to attack, as the teachers union, I think sometimes if you say something against education, you're seen as attacking. It's not at all. What we all want is a better classroom, more quality education for our children.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you say you want to reform teacher tenure, you're somehow anti-teacher, you're somehow anti-public school or whatever it is. That's simply not the case. We just want better public schools and better teachers. We want to have a better experience for all of our kids, and I think that, teachers unions need to realize that you can't just continue to protect the current system. You need to be looking forward to better ways of doing it and start working with the local schools to develop better policies to really improve the quality of the teacher in the classroom.
Well, I appreciate the visit. Thank you very much, James. And anyone interested in the essay, check it out at showmeinstitute.org. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Tim.
James Shuls, Education Policy Analyst for the Show Me Institute. And if you want to learn more about the Show Me Institute, you can telephone. Here's the phone number, 314-454-0647, 314-454-0647. And this segment has been sponsored by the Show Me Institute. Go to showmeinstitute.org to learn more.